before Memorial Day, they scheduled a vote at about 5 o'clock on Friday when everybody had plans to leave. The theory, the logic is they wait till the very bitter end to schedule something, hoping they'll bully everybody into just taking whatever's thrown out there. And they thought they would win. They would just extend the Patriot Act and keep blithely doing something that the courts have said is illegal. And the president is probably a connoisseur of transferring blame. It's always somebody else's fault. He's 7 years into his presidency, and it's still George Bush's fault. But on this particular occasion, he decided to say it was my fault. So the court has told him explicitly, the second highest court in the land, the appeals court, says that the program is illegal. That it's illegal to collect all of your phone records all of the time, indiscriminately, without having your name on the warrant, without having probable cause, without having a judge sign it. The court tells him it's illegal. So what does the president do? He says, oh yeah, if Congress will fix this, I'll do something about it. So he started the program on his own, through executive action. Even the people who supported the Patriot Act said that they never intended that it would mean the bulk collection of all your records. The court looked at the wording of the Patriot Act, and the Patriot Act says that they're allowed to collect records that are relevant to investigation. Now, I don't like the word relevant because it's a much lower standard than probable cause. But even if you accept on the face that these are the words relevant, the court said it would be absurd to think that relevant meant everything. If relevant means everything, the word has no meaning, is what the court said. And so they told him it was illegal, and the president continued to collect all of the records all the time. So the president appointed several commissions. There was a review group that looked at this. They concluded that your privacy was being invaded, and that no real terrorist case had been disrupted by this. Now, initially, the intelligence community said 52 cases had been cracked. 52 terrorist cases have been cracked. But then when the president's own commission investigated this, looking at the classified information, the number became 0. The president's privacy and civil liberties commission looked at it also. They concluded that your privacy was being abrogated, but they also concluded that no terrorists were being caught. And then finally, the week of the debate, the Department of Justice, Inspector General, did the same thing. Looked at all of these cases and concluded really they just aren't adding unique value to catching terrorists. But here's the debate we're up against, why it's sometimes a difficult debate. We do continue to have legal tactics in our country. We need to do something about it. I don't have to tell you about what happened in Boston. But the thing is they stand up and they say ridiculous, absurd, and unsubstantiated things. And say, without the Patriot Act, we could have never looked at the Boston bombers' phone record. That's ridiculous. The kid was already dead. He'd already blown up and killed and maimed people on the street. You think that's not probable cause? I have no argument with looking at the records of terrorists. In fact, I want to look at more records of more terrorists, but less records of innocent Americans. There is some argument that we are being overwhelmed with information. The government collects so much information that they can't go through it. I read a few years ago they had 800 million hours of audio from, I'm not sure exactly what it's from, but they've got to do like 25% of it. The FBI said last week that they're concerned that they don't have enough agents to respond and investigate the potential terrorist threats. So I said, why don't we save the $1 billion that we're harassing Americans with and spend it on more FBI agents? You know, the thing is we can investigate terror. We can go after people who would attack us by using the probable cause standard. The gentleman that drove over, not gentleman, the terrorist that drove over from Phoenix to Garland to shoot up the cartoon contest, we already arrested him before. I think we've had some probable cause to continue to think that he was a threat to our country. But we're not getting it by investigating everyone, and in the process, are we actually giving up on who we are and what we're fighting against? You know, by saying, no longer is it no longer The idea that your papers are secure in your home comes from an old doctrine. It's like man's castle is his house is his castle. Now would say a man or a woman's house is their castle. But the thing is that once upon a time when the Fourth Amendment was written, you kept your papers in your house, in your castle. They were real papers. You could pick them up and put them. But most of our papers now are not in a castle, they're in a cloud. And they're virtual, and they're on our phone connected somewhere else. So there was a famous case called Maryland versus Smith in 1979. In it, the court ruled that the government can't collect your records if you don't have an expectation of privacy. Well, like so many times, the vote wasn't 9-0, the vote was 6-3. Justice Marshall wrote at the time that you do have an expectation of your records, and he said there will come a time in which people will be able to turn so much from your records, maybe even more than your content. There are now people writing that your records, your metadata, can give as much or more information than your papers. Think about it, if the government comes into your house and they can determine about you, or if the government goes on your cell phone and they can determine about you. There's infinitely more data and information about you online now than there is in your papers. I think you do have an expectation of privacy. Just because the phone companies hold your phone numbers, you expect them to do it for a billing. But you never gave them permission to share that information with anybody else. I say it should stop. There are people who have written about how information overwhelms people. Herbert Simon is a political philosopher, and he wrote that more information you get, the less you understand it, the more you make your decision-making process isn't as good. Malcolm Gladwell sort of summarized this also. He said that good decision-making is not about knowledge, data. It's about understanding. So if you can't understand your data, if you make the haystack so large, you'll never find the needle in a haystack. Do we have to protect ourselves? Yes. But we should do it in a targeted fashion. There's people for whom we have suspicion. This was a big deal to our founding fathers. We all talk about the Second Amendment now. Most Republicans are defenders of the Second Amendment, as I am. But the thing is the Fourth Amendment probably motivated our founders more. I guess because they couldn't conceive of anybody ever taking your gun away. But at the time of the Revolution, the British government was taking your papers away from you. The government had passed the stamp tax, and the colonists hated it. But the only way they could enforce it was by looking at your papers, and your papers were in your house. Like the government always says, it was inconvenient to get a judge's warrant with your name on it. So they started letting the soldiers write warrants. And they were generalized warrants. They called them at the time writs of assistance. James Otis fought this, not too far from here, in the 1760s, and it was a big battle. They ended up losing. John Adams was 25 years old at the time, sitting in the courtroom, and he came out to believe over time that was the spark that led to the revolution. And then when we had the discussion over the Bill of Rights, it was a big discussion of whether to have it at all. Some of the founders said, well, if you write down some rights, people think that's all you get. All the rights have been listed, and they'll think that's a complete listing. So some didn't want the Bill of Rights at all, until someone came back and said, you know what, we'll have the Ninth and 10th Amendment. And the Ninth Amendment says those rights not listed are not to be disparaged. And some people get confused on this. They say, well, I'm a literalist, and it doesn't say privacy, so you don't have the right to privacy. But they have to be listed. Your rights come, as many of us believe, from your Creator. They're naturally yours, and government can't take them away from you. The thing is that the rights aren't all listed. The right to privacy is sort of in the Fourth Amendment, but even if it weren't, your rights are not listed. The powers are listed. The powers that we gave to government are enumerated. So the 10th Amendment says those not enumerated, those not specifically given to the federal government, are left to the states and the people. And so the thing is that we need to continue to fight this battle, because this is it's not often that I decide to get up and stand up and talk for 10 hours. The Bill of Rights is important, but it's also important for another reason. I think politically that when we become the party of the entire Bill of Rights, is still in the minority, right? Just probably slightly. You got Republican government, so we're doing something right. But in Massachusetts, of all places, you've got to understand the bigger party. So you've got everybody who believes in the Second Amendment. That's great. You need to get people who believe in the First Amendment, which is not only freedom of press, but religious liberty. When I say I don't want the government on or listening or knowing anything about my phone calls, I also don't want them in my church. We need to be the party of the Second Amendment, the First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Third. There's some are still worried about that. The thing is that the whole Bill of Rights, the Fifth and Sixth Amendment, I think of these as more of like the Justice Amendments. In the Fifth Amendment, it says the government can't take your stuff, can't take your property without just compensation. It should be a rare and extraordinary time when the government takes your property. It was the Kelo case, Kelo versus London, a few years ago. The extraordinary thing here, and this is something we should be concerned about, is the government made the proposition that they can take private property from someone who lives in a place and replace it with someone who promises to pay more taxes. They've done this in some states. By condemning a church that doesn't pay taxes and replacing it with a box store. Private property just shouldn't be taken from one private property owner ever and given to another private property. One reason it's important to vet who your candidate might be for president is that the president gets to nominate Supreme Court justices. And as I recall, there was a Republican president that gave a suitor who ended up voting to take private property from one and give it to another. One of my favorite stories was some taxpayers in New Hampshire where he had a house got upset with him. So they decided to have a petition of the local city government to condemn his house up there and turn it into a hotel that would pay for that. They weren't actually serious. They just wanted to give him a little bit of a message that what's good for everything I want can be also used that another as well. The Fifth Amendment says the government shouldn't take your property without just compensation, without due process. Another way we're taking property is something called civil asset forfeiture. The government can take your property without ever charging you of a crime. Disproportionately, this is occurring against poor people, African Americans, Hispanics, those who don't have as much ability to defend themselves against government, and also those who deal in cash. And people say, well, who deals in cash? Maybe you know. But some poor people who just can't get everything together and they deal in cash. They go to the dentist sometimes and they're riding down the street and they make a turn without a wrong signal and get pulled over. And they say, do you have any money? And they honestly say, yeah, $1,000. I'm going to the dentist. And they say, give it to you. The government takes it with no accusation, and then they tell the person who they take it from, prove to us that you got this legally. That sort of turns justice on its head. You should be innocent until proven guilty, not guilty until you can prove innocent. The U.S. attorney most famous for doing this is now your attorney general. And I objected to her completely on those grounds and got grief. But the thing is there's a company selling snack food in Hearst Brothers in New York City. She confiscated $500,000 from them. There was never any evidence that they did anything wrong. No tax evasion, they weren't involved in drugs or anything illegal. They just had a lot of cash. So they made a lot of cash deposits. There have been like a small Korean grocery store owners have had their money confiscated because they're putting in $9,000 4 times a day. Well, they don't get robbed. So as soon as they get $9,000, they put it in. And that's called structuring. So they look at your records, they say that you're structuring, but then you're guilty until you prove yourself innocent. The worst case recently was one with the Institute for Justice. If you've not heard of the Institute for Justice, they're a great group. They defend a lot of these cases. There was a motel in New Jersey, the How's one motel?
Tewksbury.
I didn't say it right. Tewksbury. Don't ask me to say Cuban. Never would have got that one. So anyway, there was this motel, worth about $1.5 million, completely paid off. 200,000 people stayed in the motel over 14 years, and like 6 or 8 or 10 of them were convicted of selling drugs. It turns out that most of the hotels in the area had about the same percentage. The government didn't decide to go after those hotels because they had a liens placed against them. They couldn't get good cash by selling the hotel. So the Institute for Justice stepped in, they fought the case, and they were finally able to win. I'm guessing it cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars. Fortunately, people support the Institute in order to do this. But it's amazing to me that you let the government take something from somebody who's never charged, and it's like having a rental house. Somebody selling marijuana out the back of your rental house. Are you now responsible? They can take that rental house. But often it's worse than that. It's grandma living in a poor section in town, often minority, whose 15-year-old kid is selling marijuana out the back of the house. Yeah? Well, why would you want to take the only stabilizing force in that family? Why would you want to take their house? Do you think you're making it better for that family? There was a family in the Surabelos family in Philadelphia. This is probably a $200,000 house. Kid was selling drugs out the back of the house. They caught him. That's a completely different story. But they took the house. They evicted the family from the house, barricaded the house, locked the house up, padlocked the house, and kicked the family to the street. It's like, really? This is how we're going to fix the drug problem in our country? By evicting families from houses? If we become a party, though, that's concerned about this, this criminal justice, and how it affects poor people, how it affects people who don't have the means to fight government, we're going to find a lot of new friends that have this sort of development. The Sixth Amendment says you have a right to a trial by jury, right to a speedy trial by jury. In 2011, we passed in Congress something called indefinite detention. It was on the Defense Authorization Bill. It allows an American citizen to be indefinitely detained without a trial. We're having this debate on the floor. It's a debate with another Republican senator. I don't like to be too specific, from Arizona. And so I look at him and I say, do you think that an American citizen could be sent to Guantanamo Bay with no lawyer, no trial, based on an accusation? And he said, yeah, for dangerous. So it begs the question, doesn't it? Who gets to decide who's dangerous and who's not dangerous? And I've just been amazed. I mean, I told somebody recently, I said, it's like arguing with people who have the mindset of being juvenile. Do they not realize that there are times in our past when justice hasn't been out to people and we've made generalizations about people? I think of Richard Jewell. Everybody thought it was an Olympic bomb. Remember when the bombing happened? Pictures on TV. Everybody said it did. They were absolutely sure he did it because he fit the profile. He wore glasses. See if you got there. And a backpack. He was an introvert. See, think about the problems we get to if we're going to generalize who we need to be afraid of, who we need to report to. See somebody, report somebody. The Bureau of Justice came out with some things that you need to be aware of, people that you might want to report to the government as suspicious. People are missing fingers. If you ever been a farmer, right? People have stains on their clothing. That's half of my campaigns. People who have changed the color of their hair. I'm not going to ask anybody to raise their hand. People who have weatherized ammunition at home or multiple guns. The thing is if you're going to make, people have to pay in cash. These are all supposed to be suspicious signs for terrorism. And it's like, if those are the signs that we're going to use to apprehend terrorists, personally myself would like to have an attorney before I get sent to might not live this in the rest of the day. Why don't we be the party who wants to defend the entire Bill of Rights, including those who are minorities, those who don't look like other people, those who aren't popular? You can be a minority, not just because of the shade of your skin, but because of the shade of your ideology. You can be a minority. Minority because you're an evangelical Christian. You can be a minority because you teach your kids at home. You can be a minority because you don't. You all can. Anybody that's ever had a thought that not everyone else had needs to be worried about having a Bill of Rights. I'm telling you, look, the Bill of Rights isn't so much for the high school board member. It isn't so much for the prom queen. For some people, everything always goes their way. It still is for them, but it's really for the least among us. It's for those who live in poverty, those who have suffered from discrimination. You know what? We are that party that's proud to protect those people. My goodness, we're now talking about lots of new people that see us as a great place to be. Says you get a speedy trial. There was a story in the New Yorker a couple of months ago about Marie Crowley. A young man was 16 years old and accused of a crime. He was put into Rikers Island, and he spent 3 years there without a trial. He ultimately was released with no trial. He was charged but never ended up going to court. 3 years in prison. Much of it was in solitary confinement. He tried to commit suicide several times. When you think to yourself, because we're seeing so much anger, people in the streets that are angry. But you ask yourself, you say, I can't understand this. But imagine if you were Lee Crowder's parents or his friend, or you went to high school with him. He ultimately was released without ever being taken to court. The person that accused him of the crime wasn't even in the country legally, fled back to Mexico, and he was accused of the crime and never went to court. I'm here to tell you that we become the party that defends the Sixth Amendment as well as we do the Second Amendment, we're going to win it in a landslide. When we become the party of the entire Bill of Rights, when we become the party that defends every one of the Bill of Rights, people high and low, rich and poor, white and black and brown, when we become that party, when we become the party that proclaims our message with the passion of Patrick Henry, when we become that party, I think nothing can stop us. I want to be that